There are no foolish questions, and no man becomes a fool until he has stopped asking questions.
The Interplanetary Podcast, the exploration of space for the benefit of all humankind. Your hosts in England, Rob, Annable and Matt Russell.
Oh yeah, baby. Steinmetz. I've never heard of Steinmetz. Have you, Rob?
I haven't, no.
We picked Steinmetz because right at the end of our interview today, which is going to take up the bulk of the podcast, we ended up talking about asking questions and how important it was that however silly the questions seemed to be, that those were the places where most of the really good ideas come from.
Yeah, how to encourage people to keep asking silly questions.
Carl Sagan used to bang on about it. He used to say that something terrible had happened, that high school students don't ask the same questions as their junior school counterparts.
Yeah.
Something terrible happens at school. But I don't think it is that. I don't think it happens at school. I just think you grow out of asking annoying questions. It might be because your parents get annoyed a little bit. I know I have on long car journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. But I suppose the conversation in the interview coming up also touches on the idea that the space that you asked that in, the culture around it on the internet can potentially suppress that sometimes in the wrong environments as well. That the fear of being shot down in public can cause that.
And also your position within the group as well. If you're all anonymous, then it makes it easier to ask silly questions because you're not the person carrying the badge saying, I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. Isn't that the line? That's the classic,
well, I definitely do know a few people whose dogs do have accounts, especially on Facebook.
Yeah, they're all on Instagram, being influencers.
So, yes, we have Nexus Aurora. They're the people on today, and we've talked about them 6 episodes ago on 229.
Yeah, we should explain why I'm back. I'm back because it's a continuation of that conversation.
Yeah.
From that previous episode, exploring the group that put together the winning entry for the Mars Society Comp last year.
Yeah, so it's kind of Mars Episode 5 Part 2, if that's a sort of complicated enough.
Absolutely, yeah. We thought it would only be fair to get the guys who we spent quite a bit of time talking about to come on and have their say as well.
No, absolutely, and it's such an interesting project. But before we get to that, I thought here's a very interesting one. Today is the 10th of May, or this is the day that the podcast is coming out, and it's the anniversary of the 1946 71-mile high non-orbital suborbital flight of a V2 rocket out of White Sands. Von Braun had only arrived in America 6 months before with his team, but that is the very first time an experiment, an observation, was done from space.
So that's 71 miles high. So which definition does that cover?
What is 100 kilometers in miles? Well, it's 62 miles. In fact, so it's gone over the Kármán line.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah, it's space by anyone's definition.
Yeah.
Even Jonathan McDowell's definition. It's definitely space. So yeah, but so I think that's a pretty groundbreaking.
And Von Braun had been there 6 months before.
Yeah, so
was he a part of that project?
Yeah, so he was a part of that project. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was his. They'd brought the V2s. This was a V2 that was actually built in Nazi Germany that they had, captured and brought back over, modified. It was the third one that they'd attempted to fly, and it was the first one that worked. And so, this was, this is the start of, all those things like Mercury and Apollo, everything, isn't it, really? That's the very first tentative steps into...
Yeah, it's just interesting to think about that. What a short timescale that is. I don't know enough about the Von Braun story, the details of those early years, but to be brought over and just be put to work immediately, effectively.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was any messing around. I think everyone knew that's the next big thing. Yeah. And Von Braun was the only person who managed to build a suborbital rocket at that point.
Yeah, so the political machinations around whether that we might go through today over questions about defection and the politics around it just brushed aside.
Absolutely brushed aside.
Put him to work.
Just get him to work. Well, and all the other people that had worked with him as well. It's not just von Braun. It's it's a whole elite team of Nazi scientists. Amazing. But it would also have been the 46th birthday of Cecilia Payne, or who was later to be called Cecilia Payne-Koposchkin, who, of course, famously, a very famous astronomer who kind of realised that the sun wasn't made from the same stuff as the planets and was hydrogen and helium. And, a legend, astronomy legend, Cecilia Payne-Koposchkin, would have had a 46th birthday on the day all that was happening.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Okay.
It's a moment in history. So, Nexus Aurora, because this is such a long interview, we should maybe get post-haste to it.
Yeah, let's press on.
In this interview, there are parts of what they talk about that are very much connected to Starship, right?
Yeah, I suppose we better mention something called SN15.
Yeah, SN15 did, of course, as virtually every single one of our listeners, unless they've somehow managed to be completely away from their normal news feeds, managed to land. It managed to land, and it was pretty impressive. It did it in a way that looked very, very assured. It was a very assured, sure-footed landing, I thought.
It did. And the timing of that hot on the heels of the announcement about HLS as well. It's good, isn't it, for him to nail that process, having it just been announced that they'd won the contract for the human lander system. Yeah,
well, it's kind of on hold, that human landing system. You know that, don't you? That the other two have complained, and so now it's kind of they have.
I knew they complained, but it's complained so much they've actually
it puts it on hold for a little bit.
Really?
Not that I don't think that in any way deters Musk at all, because he's doing it anyway.
Yeah,
it's nice to have the $2 billion, but we're doing it anyway. I think is his kind of.
But are there many direct? Just thinking about the physics of it, are there many direct comparisons really in terms of what he learns from the belly flop procedure and landing it on Earth? It's a completely different environment, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have much. Well, I mean, there must be a lot of data you get from flying Raptors, landing them safely, and then taking them back to McGregor or wherever they go to open them up and see exactly what is going on when you fly them.
Yeah,
I mean that there's so much data, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Falcon 9 is so advanced, is because if you can land a rocket, you can actually learn loads more about it.
Yeah, take it apart, take a look at it.
Yeah.
So just the act of bringing something back, flamey end down successfly.
Yeah,
I suppose is enough.
It's very useful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced he's not going to try and fly that one again though. Just to because there's more. Well, there's more data There's more data, isn't there, in flying something twice? See what the rattle it out. And of course, I think we've just had a 10th flight of a Falcon 9 as well, haven't we?
Yeah, we did.
He is smashing out the achievements.
But I think one of the most interesting things about that HLS proposal, if I've understood it right, is that the scale of the bit of kit that he's proposing to land potentially puts the thrusters right at the top of the rocket, doesn't it? And might be the solution to the dust cloud problem.
Well, I think they have to do that. They have to have for the moon landing. Yeah, I have to say that the fact that system has to be so completely different does make me feel very safe with the bet that I have with Eric Berger that I have to eat his book if they land on the moon in 2024. I am definitely not worried about that one.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not like he can point to SN15 and go, "Well, look, we'll just do it like that." It's not quite the same.
No, and I'll be happy to eat the book if it is, because it will be the most phenomenal. It'll be the most phenomenal day. Humans landing on Mars in 2024 in a starship. Wow, I'm happy to.
I think
wash it down with a pane of glass.
Yeah, I think there'll be a bunch of us happy to join you, to be honest, a chapter each.
Yeah, maybe we can do a Discord eating of the
Yeah. So news in for the rest of the Discord server members. You've got a chapter each.
And talking of Discord, during the interview, you might be able to hear a boop, and that was our latest Discord member,
Adam James French.
There we go.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. You hear yourself literally joining as we were interviewing Nexus Aurora. So that's awesome. And obviously, anyone else who wants to come and join the gang and possibly co-host a show, hey, Rob? So that is go to interplanetary.org.uk or patreon.com/interplanetary if you want to check it out. But in the meantime, shall we have a listen to this interview?
Let's do it.
Aikute.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
Rob and myself are joined on the podcast by Nexus Aurora. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Instead of going through me pronouncing everyone's names wrong, is it okay if you sort of go through, introduce yourselves, and let us know a little bit about your background and how you're involved in Nexus Aurora?
Sure. I suppose I'll start. I'm Sean Vessels. I'm an architect in South Africa. How did I get involved in Nexus Aurora? I got involved in Nexus Aurora on Reddit when I saw somebody posting a building for Mars, which I thought would never, ever work. So I did what you do on the internet. I wanted to prove them wrong. And now I've been on Nexus Aurora for a year and a half, still proving people wrong, I suppose, or trying. So that's how I got involved.
Cohen.
Yes, that's almost right. Oh. That's great.
Yes, see, that's why I was hoping you were going to do it yourself.
I was waiting for you to pronounce my first name.
I'm paranoid about people's names.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. So my name is Koen Kegel in Dutch. So I'm from the Netherlands. Thank you for having us. I used to be an architect. I was trained as an architect, but now I'm full-time in politics, local politics for my city council, which I'm a leader of a local political party, which is also active nationally. I started Nexus Aurora a week after the original creators started it, or a few weeks after, also through Reddit. I was really, really interested in this idea of the 1 million people city on Mars. And because it is such a big concept, not only the architecture part, but everything that has to do with creating a new civilization as a whole. And that's what we also try to talk about in our complete design for that city. And that intrigued me a lot. That's why I was there.
And Cameron.
Yeah, I'm Cameron Ruff. I'm just about to finish up an aerospace degree in the US. I also joined from Reddit. I think I might have even seen Sean's designs appearing somewhere on Reddit, and then wanting to get involved with that, and especially all the extra engineering aspects of bringing humans to be a multiplanetary species. And since then, I've been there for a year and a half. I worked with the transport division, and now we're working on some fun robotics projects for a Mars analog mission at the end of the year.
I was really fortunate that Rob put me in touch with this piece of work, because Rob himself obviously is an architect and saw some real value in your submission to the Mars Society, which you went on and won, and we talked about that submission in podcast 229, I think it was, which is only about 6 weeks ago. Did you manage to hear what we said about your project?
Yeah, we did actually. It was actually nice hearing you guys say good things about our project, and it was also clear that especially Rob, like you understood the actual problem that we were trying to solve, which is as you've mentioned, it was more than the technical problem. It's actually solving the human problem, which is the biggest issue, I believe. Still, I mean. It was really nice actually hearing you guys' opinions, and I think you guys were spot on there.
Right. I'm glad you enjoyed our review. We certainly enjoyed talking about it and exploring your proposals, which were very well presented and got across those ideas very clearly. And I think I'd looked through many of the shortlisted entries, but yours really stood out because it really chimed with things that I'd hoped to achieve with some early ideas that I'd had for a concept for that submission. Clearly, the mistake that I made was not spending enough time on Reddit, where you, by the sounds of it, all met, because I'm in the middle of lockdown working away on ideas on my own and really needed a team. which is clearly the success that you guys had putting together a group of people and a collaboration. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, around how the project grew, how it's become so strong with so many members, and how you manage that process. So tell us about the Nexus Aurora group then now.
Yeah, what I can say about that is that it is really ups and downs, and what we have called big freezes of our community have also happened for short periods of time. For example, right after we handed in our Mars Society design for 1 million people city on Mars, a lot of people were like, okay, so now what? Because that was the whole goal of our group. So it was really hard to keep people interested. And that was the first big freeze. And the other one was after we heard that we really could actually present our designs, because that was, I think, a month or even 2 months after we handed in our proposal, our 20-page report. And then we were really excited again, heating up our whole community with, let's say, dozens of people who are really actively contributing to the final presentation, which is great, because even though your community is maybe hundreds or even 1,000 people like we are right now, only a small percent of those are really doing a lot of the actual work. And that's maybe 5% or even less sometimes. So we are really happy that people were really contributing a lot again. And after we had that presentation and even won that competition, then still a lot of people were like, okay, so now what? And what is the next step? So we're really looking for an answer to that question ourselves. And what is also interesting is that one of the original creators of Nexus Aurora, Adrian Moisa, who was a space instructor on our Discord, which you might have heard of, he was really the one pushing for a lot of it in the first half up to the moment that we handed in our 20-page report. But he was on to other bigger things. He's creating a new type of software for collaboration, typically a little bit like Discord is as well, which is really cool. But that meant that someone else had to pick up where he left off. And the people who are in this podcast right now, so Sean, Cameron, and myself, have been chosen by the community to be the new leaders of Nexus Aurora itself, which was a process of sort of a new type of democracy in itself, because we wanted to have a multi-core, what we call it, core leadership, which is also maybe interesting because that's something that we needed to learn ourselves as well, because we saw the weakness of a single leader who can do something else with his time, which is completely understood. It's a volunteer project anyway, but that also has its limits for a community project like this. So we wanted to make sure that would not happen again. We talked about it a lot, and we had a vote with the most active community members, and that's where we are right now.
Was there any? I mean, that's really super interesting. Was there any other societies or other? Well, what was the basis of your model? How did you come to that kind of model of leadership?
Nexus Aurora has been a really, in every single way, a living project. In the way we organize it, in the way that we've decided to lead it or form ourselves, it's really evolved over time. And we didn't really have any basis to start, if I remember correctly. As throughout the entire project, not only now, but even while we were doing the Mars City State competition, we changed and iterated how we did projects a lot. In the beginning, it was like a free-for-all. It was very much an incubator within the Discord server that was being run. And every project got an idea, and every project then got a channel and progressed. And then we split off into 2 servers. We then came back to one server. And then we ended up in the iteration where we are today, where we have a single server of more highly focused projects. And so while we've done that, we have evolved alongside other groups over time, or we've had groups that split off, like the Humanity and Beyond. We've had people like the Futurists Foundation have reached out to us as well, because they've seen what we're doing. And it's kind of just a big group of people, a big community of communities that are trying to figure out how to do it correctly. And so what we've been able to do is talk to some of these other communities and potentially work with them to share members and to share what works and what doesn't work when it comes to effectively running a community of volunteers.
Have you had any interaction or discussion with people in and around the traditional aerospace engineering sector about project management, about team structure and sort of team scale in relation to what you've achieved? And has there been any sort of discussion or reflection on how it compares to the sector and wider business?
Not specifically aerospace companies. And what I also feel is that what we are doing is really impossible to compare to standard practice, I would say. And that is actually the quality of what we are doing as well. So if we started to go to Boeing, Lockheed Martin, whatever, it's first of all, it's really different because of the scale. If you have, as you know, like 150, I think, is about the limit of people, the amount of people that can self-organize very efficiently, right? That's like in a lot of the literature. And even though we are with 1,000 people on our Discord server, in practice, we are with 50 to 100 people, because those are the people doing the work, and those are the people that I actually really know. The other 900s, I don't know all their usernames and who those people are. But at this moment, we can self-organize. And that's actually also very effective and efficient at this time, which is very organic, as Cameron said. And I agree completely with that. So what our main difficulty will be, or challenge for the upcoming period of time, is how do you scale up to hundreds of projects, even if people are interested in joining, while keeping that same mentality. And we try to always look at companies who have done that effectively, and it seems like SpaceX is one of those companies that have maintained that sort of startup mentality almost. And let's do it. If you have a good argument, we're going to go for it. We use as few managers as possible, as little bureaucracy as possible. Let's do it. If it's a good idea, let's go. And that's something we try to keep in our community as much as possible. At this moment, it's possible, but the question is, how do we scale up? And that's something that we need to learn ourselves. And I think that is the time exactly that we need to start talking to companies who have done that successfully. I'm reading books about it now, but I think it's also a good idea, Rob, to start talking to companies who have done this successfully indeed.
It's interesting to reflect on that comparison you just made, for example, with SpaceX, because, of course, one of the things that's often cited in discussing that business is how often Musk talks about being both the chief engineer and the chief financial officer, and those usual tricky decisions just get made in his head. So perhaps they remain agile because it's not quite the democracy that you guys are striving for.
So what's interesting about the setup that we've tried to do is Nexus Aurora is, you can see more Nexus Aurora as a breeding ground where whole different projects happen. But within each project, there's different leadership structures. So there are a lot of projects that we've got one project called Red Stratus, for example, and they've been doing tremendously. They're active, they're busy on a weekly basis. I've got very little idea what goes on there. Because they've self-organized within that structure. And how they integrate with Nexus Aurora is they feed off the users that have similar interests that jump between projects. So a lot of people have interest in multiple projects and they move between these different environments. I believe at Google at one stage, I'm not sure how they work now as Alphabet, but I believe Google had a similar structure at one point where no employer was fixed to a specific project. Then they could move around. Their position in the company was fluid. The idea is that you invest more where you've got passion, opposed to having to work there because you have to work there. And I think that's pretty much what is keeping us alive at the moment, because nobody's getting paid to do what we do on Nexus Aurora. And some people are, I mean, myself included, Koen especially, he's spending lots of, well, actually, I can't really mention names because a lot of people are spending hours and hours and hours on Nexus Aurora every week. No one's getting paid. And it leaves a bit of a difficult spot for us in some situations, because there are certain tasks that need to be done which aren't fun necessarily, but they have to get done to get the organization working. How do you keep that going? And that's a difficult question that we have to answer. Fortunately, we've got people that are very invested, that are prepared to do these tasks, even though there's no immediate reward to them. But most of Nexus Aurora is run on passion. We can't pay for passion. We can't get somebody to say, listen, we want you to stick on this project and do nothing but this, and we'll give you cash. That's the way the world usually works. And that's probably the biggest difference between looking at aerospace engineers or any traditional company and what we are doing is we're asking people to do fairly detailed work for free. And they're not necessarily going to get any reward. The reward is doing the work. So that's a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I really do like those kind of passion clubs, though. I mean, there's, you could say that about various societies that are built on people coming together with a sort of set of passions and wanting to kind of be involved in a community. But how do you stop that from dissipating too widely? Because I must admit, I was surprised when I went onto your Discord server, thinking it was just going to be about your Mars city, and then finding actually it's this vast place with loads of projects going on and lots of different sort of thinking. How do you stop the community essentially running away with itself and becoming too nebulous, full of passionate ideas, but essentially dissipating?
One of the basic things that I think is important is to have at least one common goal. And that's something that I push for a lot also within the community, to keep talking about that. Because otherwise, if you say, for example, we are a space community only, that is so broad that you get a lot of people who start building rocket companies and whatever. It is possible, but you want to narrow it down at least slightly. And what brought us together was, in this case, Mars colonization or settlement. And what we therefore put as our mission statement, or our goal, is that we want to make life multiplanetary. So for humanity to not only go to Mars, but even further, or start at the moon is also fine. And we might later in this talk have a discussion about even a low Earth orbit station, which is also reaching for the stars and humanity leaving Earth and taking a step in the direction of becoming multiplanetary. And that is at least a way to get some focus within our community. So you have to pass at least that test, that it's clearly related to that. And then if you have passion, as Sean clearly says, then you can start a project. And what I would like to say and add to that is that I think Adrian, one of the people who started Nexus Aurora, he compared it with a brain. And what I like about that comparison is that the more neurons get fired over time, and that is the same as people putting passion and time and effort and chats, in this case in Discord, in that project. The more people get attracted to it, the stronger the project becomes. And the more you will see of that project everywhere. And in that case, I personally really love the idea of Nexus Aurora as a brain that has projects within it that get stronger over time.
I think that's one of the issues we face as well, right? Is how do we foster a lot of passion in the projects, and how do we get a lot of people to come in with that passion, but not let it run away into something that's a crazy mess? And that's also something that we've had to evolve over time. Working briefly with 2 Discord channels, where one was an incubator where we just let it run wild. And then any of those projects that seemed to actually gain some traction, we moved over to a more streamlined server. And what we're finding, I think, continually is that Discord is a great place for discussion, and it does foster a lot of passion and a lot of discussion for projects. And then the harder part is then to keep that passion and then allow it but still constrain it into that mission goal that we've set in order to produce usable results out of that. And that's the difference between us and a place like SpaceX, is we have to be a lot more democratic about it, because we're not paying people essentially to do what we're telling them. We need to give them the option of what they want to do, and then try to kind of steer it in the right direction so that it still accomplishes our mission goal. And so that's what we're offering, is a place where you can communicate with like-minded people towards a more common mission goal that we've set, where we can support you, we can provide a place for your project, we can even potentially provide funding to make that a reality. But that's one of the main things we continue to develop and experiment with.
So when you give people options like that, are you finding that there are particular themes or particular characters or people or backgrounds that are appearing.
A lot of architects, apparently.
Yeah. I guess that's what I was interested in to a certain extent.
Yeah. But the projects, they're quite varied. From the Mars Society competition, we came out of that, and we currently run a couple of projects, one of which is for the Mars Desert Research Station. That was one that we were actually approached by the Mars Society to develop some projects for. But some of the projects that have come out of our members themselves are the Red Stratus, the State of the Game, the Orbital Can station. Those are all community made, and they vary widely from anything from a space-based board game over to space stations for Mars and Earth. So it's a very big range, which is great because it means that people can be passionate from many areas and walks of life and still contribute something that does fall under that mission goal.
So what's the best way that people can get involved? And is there a type of person that you feel as though is missing that you would like to kind of sort of get your notice? Oh, we could really do with more of that. But what's the best way to get involved with it?
Yeah, or a part of the world. Is there a particular part of the world that you don't have input from culturally?
Those are good questions. Firstly, we actually have a channel on Discord, and that says choose your skills. So we can also tag people based on their skills. So we need particular help with a certain skill set. And then you see that we have chosen about 15 different types of knowledge and skills that people can have. And you see that over 100 people have chosen student, right? Because they feel that they are not really masters of any kind of skill. But our economics section of the Mars Society 20-page report was done by a student who is now living in Abu Dhabi, I think, but he's from South Korea. And he was great at this economics. And a lot of people, we need to sort of convince that even though you're 17 years old or 22 years old and you're not Elon Musk yourself, yes, you can contribute. And that is the great thing. But if you're asking what kind of people are we missing at this time, I would say diehard engineers in terms of material science, and people who know structural engineering and are willing to do the actual calculations that we need right now, because we're getting at that stage with some projects that it is really important that do you need 2 millimeters or 4 millimeters thick aluminum in this project because it's going to weigh half. That's going to help us. But we try to solve these kinds of problems by getting into talks with software companies who can help us to provide hopefully a little bit more affordable than market prices, great software that we can use to collaborate all around the world and do these calculations with, et cetera, et cetera. So, to come back to the first question, how can people get involved? We have a Discord server. We have mainly Reddit as a way to communicate, a lot of other social channels as well, where you can follow us. So anytime that you Google Nexus Aurora, you will find at least our Reddit page, and over there you can find a button towards our Discord, which you can join right away.
What's interesting in terms of the people that we attract is I've discovered, we've known this from a while ago, but it's made very clear as time goes on, is the projects choose the people instead of people choosing the project, which is a bit of a weird way of saying it. But with the Mars Society, the million-person city-state design challenge was interesting because it was an extremely broad topic, especially the way we were running it. We had politics, we had discussion, we had like hours and hours of discussions on timekeeping on Mars. We had agriculture and medicine and administration. It covered everything, every aspect of life. Because of that, we could get almost any person involved, like literally anybody could come in and there was a space for them. The project chose the people and the project allowed everything. Now, we've got a bunch of different projects in Nexus Aurora, and each project is focused around certain type of people. And a lot of these projects have subcategories. One of the bigger projects, one of the more active ones at the moment is the Orbital Can. And it's got subcategories because we want to build a space station in orbit with a completely different business model than what's happening at the moment. And it's got different aspects which have got nothing to do with mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering, even though it's mostly a mechanical and aerospace type of project. We've also got one of the projects which is moving a bit slowly at the moment, but it's the architectural hand guide. And that's attracted, for example, the Mars Society students division, where it's again broad topics in terms of what are the principles behind building things on another planet, which often has got less to do with of engineering, sometimes got nothing to do with architecture. The topic around radiation, for example, is more a medical issue than an engineering issue. So the type of people we want are generally people that are interested and passionate about the topic. And there are projects for them, and we can create new projects for people as well.
Yeah, what I'd like to add to that is that literally any skill set can be made valuable on our server. And that sounds weird because you would say like, no, you have to be technically really great at contributing on our server. But if you are even great at website building or just in general communication, you're a journalist, you can start writing a magazine about all the things that we're doing, and you are really contributing really, really well. Because spreading this message and getting more people involved, like we all got involved through Reddit, because someone took the time to make that post and to tell us about our Discord channel that you would never have found otherwise. Those communicators, for instance, are of vital importance. As important as the engineers, even though they might have no technical skill sets at all. And that's what I find fascinating myself, because for example, the economist or the psychologist or the biologist or the journalist, all of them are as vital to the end goal as anyone else. And that's really weird, because if you have a space company, why would you have someone who has studied psychology or generally biology, for instance? That's strange, right? Because it's not really the first thing that you think about when you think about a space company. But for us, it's actually vital for our success, because we try to approach things in a all-encompassing way. And we need all of the people who are interested in trying to help make humans a multiplanetary species. We give them that chance. That's basically what we're trying to achieve. And that's also why we work open source and in this kind of democracy that we try to find out ourselves, to be honest.
On the open source question, do you have any concerns about the platform you use in terms of a proprietary tool and ownership of that data and information? There's a lot of knowledge on that Discord server, isn't there? I confess, I don't know myself. Who owns Discord? Microsoft.
Oh, like that. Oh, yeah. They are.
Microsoft walked away from those talks recently.
Okay.
Yeah, they
not
were
yet.
In talks.
That's a good one. What is interesting to say about that is that we actually tell all people in our Discord, if there's anything worth saving, put it in our Google Drive, which you can always say is owned by Google, but at least it's in the cloud, and we have also a local backup ourselves. But you see that we had this problem in the past, that on Discord, we had a lot of very high level discussions, and we went into really a lot of depth. And then 3 weeks later, we had the same discussion again, because there were new people, or people forgot, or didn't read it. So what we now say to everyone as much as possible is like, okay, so you come in our server, we see Discord maybe more like WhatsApp or another messaging service. And then if something is important enough, we put it in the documentation, or if it's renderings or images or 3D models, you put it in the Google Drive. Otherwise, assume it's going to be gone in a few weeks. That is really important as well, that we learned from our own experience, I think.
Well, we've worked with projects in order to try to cater to the style in which they want to set up. For example, I work primarily with community management over in our current Discord server. And one of the things we've had to work around is the potential of protecting IP. And so for one of our projects, we've used the tools that Discord provides, which is really handy in order to require that members can get access to the top level channels of that project. But before they get into the real development stuff, they'll need to be manually approved, which means that potentially they'll sign an NDA, or they need to implicitly or explicitly agree to a set of terms and conditions. So Discord is actually really friendly to being set up in a way that allows us to provide open projects and more closed off projects based on what the current showrunners of that project desire.
That seems important. So it's not that everything is part of the commons as such.
No, exactly. And I think we promote, and I think Kun and Sean will agree with this, I think we want to promote open sourcing as much as possible. But again, as part of being a community of volunteers, we can't really restrict things too much, or we don't want to put a hamper over people's passion and creativity. So we try to keep things open source, and we encourage that. But if people want to go in a more closed off route, we'll also try to cater to that as well. And that doesn't mean people can't join it. People can absolutely join it. It's an open project in that respect. It just means you can't join our Discord one day, scoop up all the information you want, and then leave an hour later.
Yeah, I mean that does raise a really huge point, doesn't it, with Nexus Aurora, in terms of at what point does it become a commercial entity? Because there's a big difference between sort of blue sky thinking and coming up with ideas and projects, and then suddenly if hardware's being made or something like that, as a community, because you kind of are a community with a very loose leadership structure, where does that suddenly go? How do you envisage that sort of panning out?
So one thing that we've done, and I think this also kind of needs to be made clear, is so Nexus Aurora is the community. Within that community are these projects, and each project has different leaders. And the one project that Cameron's talking about that's got more lockdown systems is they are on their way to commercialization. That's one of their goals. They want to create this product that they want to sell. And that's why we've given them opportunity to lock down to a certain degree. Being part of the community allows them to take resources from the community and share resources, which is really important because there's not loads and loads of money lying around or people. And ideally, if any single project, because Nexus Aurora doesn't own anything, but the projects might. And the projects then can, at one point, when they've come to the point where they want to commercialize, start locking down, identify the people that are leading those projects, and start taking an audit of what's actually there. And that's okay. It's if anybody wants to commercialize, that's a good thing, as long as it promotes the overall cause, which is open source, well, mainly space colonization. And the open source part is how do we get there? A lot of projects we've also identified that in a non-open source way that don't make sense, especially where we are at the moment. And open source is actually a very powerful tool to be able to do a lot more than having to close down the whole system.
I would also add to that if your competitors for some of our projects are governments, this whole idea of patenting or closing stuff off isn't really going to work. I think Musk said that in the past before. You have to just improve fast enough so others can't catch up. That might be a good way to look at it. But also, we had this discussion actually for the Mars City State design because we had a lot of what we thought were really cool ideas. And when we were like halfway there, people were saying like, oh, yeah, this is really nice. We should really close off our server because one of the other 100+ teams are going to find our server. They're going to steal all our good ideas and then we're going to lose. And then we said, no, we're actually going to open it up even more. Actually, we're going to lecture on all the lessons that we have learned before we enter the actual competition. We have made YouTube videos about how you should do architecture in our minds on Mars, for instance. And it actually attracted more talented people. And that is, I think, a really important lesson for us, because if we would have said there, we're going to close it off because we want to protect everything that we have done, then fewer people would have been attracted even halfway through the project itself. And we would have had a way worse project in the end. The fact that we were open in this case, and the fact that we want all people all around the world to be able to contribute to making life multiplanetary, that almost requires this open mentality. And we have seen the qualities of that, even though it's very hard to manage. And I have to say this as well. We, as a core, as we call it, the three of us as leadership of Nexus Aurora, chosen by the community, we feel that if we stop working on this community together with council and all the other people that are in it for 2 weeks, the project could be dead. It's really fragile. So we have to be on our toes. We have to keep working on it, have to rekindle the fire, as it were. So there's always conversation and all of that. So it's really fragile now. And we want to grow to a point that it is not that fragile anymore, but it is also a balance that we try to keep.
Maybe now's a good time to talk about sort of some of the outcomes and future projects then. And you've got an event coming up in Dubai, I believe. Can you tell us a bit about that? And the Orbital Can project in particular is something we're quite interested in. So perhaps we can talk about that. But one last question on the Mars Society competition before we finish that. How did you distribute the prize money?
Well, Cameron is our chief financial officer, chosen by the community. Maybe he can explain a little bit.
He's passed the buck. Cameron, it's on you.
Sure, I'll take that up then. So that was actually, it kind of ties into how we also run our projects, because immediately after the Mars Society, it was kind of a project vacuum. Like we knew everyone was super excited. We were riding high on winning the competition, and we realized that we didn't want to stop there. The Mars Society competition was not where we wanted to leave things off. We knew we had talent. We knew we had momentum. We wanted to keep going. And so after a couple of weeks, we kind of realized that we'd like to take this funding and put it towards more projects. So what we ended up doing is, because Adrian decided that he would like to go and work on this platform, which we're hoping in the future will also be able to benefit us. And I think it's being modeled around how all the lessons learned in developing our community. So what we've ended up doing is we've done a specific split where some of that funding has gone towards funding that platform that's being developed, and then the other funding has been put aside under the Nexus Aurora registration, which has been registered in the US, and we're going through registration as a non-profit entity currently. And so what our effective plan is for that is, as part of our sponsorship of projects, as part of our support of ongoing development, we're setting up we have set up a system where we can fund projects in order to help bring them to life and actually make them real, develop hardware and software and buy equipment. So to answer your question in a short way, basically we've set those funds aside in order to fund deserving projects within NA, and we've tried to set up a few channels in that way that we can bring those funding back in order to fund additional projects and try to grow our ability to support more and more.
That's fantastic. I fully expected that sort of answer after the conversation we've had. but I'll raise it because, of course, when you see the number of people involved in the project, which was such a powerful thing, and then to see the prize money afterwards, was it $1 each, that sort of thing?
And it was, it was great to see how unanimous the community was in wanting to do this, in how everyone said, I'm not in it for the money. I want us to take that money and put it towards the costs of upkeep and keep going with this thing. I want to see money go into projects. I want to see it upkeep the website, and it's amazing to see not only the community come together to win the competition, but also then to want to keep going, because it's not about any one member, but it's about our overall combined goal.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, we've got these other projects, like you said. You finished off one project and opened up a whole new, and you're presenting at the IAC this year, which is, and I'm assuming this is one of the major projects on the server now, and this Orbital Can project. So, who wants to kind of give us the background about how that came about and what exactly it is and how it differs from other projects that I guess are like it?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that it's a good example of how the server itself evolved, because after winning the Mars competition, we had still a lot of people who were interested, and we thought that we would need to split up into different servers. So each project would have their own Discord server. That was the idea. So we had about 20 different Discord servers, all with their own group of enthusiasts around a certain topic. So Sean started the Beyond Earth architecture server, or he led it at least. And that was more focused about architecture on the moon, or even in orbit or on Mars. but we were so spread out and spread so thin that we felt it was really hard to reach all people, to create that creative chaos that you have when you are reading stuff that you know nothing about but want to know more of, and you're talking to other people about it. And that was happening a lot when we had about 600-700 people in a server talking to each other about all of these projects, and now we were spread out. So I felt this, and I was like, okay, so maybe Beyond Earth Architecture will be our new central server. Probably all servers thought that. But I think together with Sean, I started the Orbital Can project because we saw a possibility to create a large-scale space station that could be launched on a next generation Starship in this case. So it can be 8 meters diameter to fit inside the 9-meter diameter Starship of SpaceX. And since they have at least 100 ton of payload capacity, we saw a lot of possibilities for a way cheaper space station. So in our earliest calculations, we saw that the ISS currently is about 900 or 950 cubic meters of pressurized volume, which is usable by the astronauts, which is about 7 astronauts on average that they use that volume. And we are thinking like, okay, so Elon Musk and SpaceX are building a Starship that has a fairing payload capacity and a fairing size of about 1,000 cubic meters itself. That's crazy, right? So we needed tons of missions to build this ISS. It has cost us $160+ billion US, I think in 2012 were the last estimates. So surely one launch of such a space station in this case is not going to cost even 100 billion, right? Not even 1 billion. So you see, like, that's crazy. You can launch an ISS-sized space station in a single launch. That was our main idea. A single launch space station that big, it can never be as expensive. So it's going to be at least 2 orders of magnitude cheaper, even if you mess up the production and all of that. So that was our base idea. And we started that, and a lot of people really found it very interesting. And while we were working on that, that was also the moment that people felt alienated, and we as a community with all the most active people from all these different servers now said we have to come back together to get this creative chaos again with all these different projects in one server. And that's also the same time that the 3 of us were chosen by the most active members to lead our community. And that's when the Orbital Can became part of the Nexus Aurora main server again, like all the other projects that you have seen. And to come back to the IAC, the International Astronautical Congress in Dubai in October of this year, we were talking about goal setting and the fact that we were looking for kind of a new goal. So someone found out that this is the biggest space conference there is in the world. So then we have some really enthusiastic members, and they said, yeah, you should apply. And we were like, no, we're just a group of amateurs. We don't know what we're doing. But then we just started writing an abstract, which you need to do in order to present and to write an eventual paper. And while we were writing that abstract, which is just a half a page long, about this Orbital Can station architecture, we noticed 2 things. And that is that in order to live healthily for long duration mission in space, you will need gravity, most likely. And we wanted to find out how we can do that within a space station of this diameter, 8-meter diameter, which turned out to become the LARGE, which is an acronym for Large Artificial Rotational Gravity Environment. We can talk maybe about that, but that's a very specific project proposed by one of our members, Marsden Wright, who's a project lead in that. So we wrote an abstract for that as well. And then we wrote a third abstract, which is the next generation berthing port. So normally you have a docking port, but a berthing port is you need the help of a robotic arm to connect 2 modules together. That's called berthing. We are creating a berthing port that has a hatch that is 2 meters in diameter, and not the 800 millimeters or 1300 millimeters that are currently in the space station design. So it's like a really next generation thing. So we wrote 3 abstracts, and then we just hoped that one of them maybe would be accepted And a few weeks ago, we heard that all 3 will be allowed to present in Dubai. And that is really, really awesome. So that was another, really a nice moment for our community. A lot of positivity and a lot of people who are now actively working in all kind of sub projects within this Orbital Can station. Some people are really focused on the ECLIS, which is the environmental control and life support system, for instance. Others are working on structures, etc.
So are you going to, because they're all part of the same project, aren't they? The Orbital Can has the large inside it, and they join together via this birthing mechanism. So are you going to present it as one great big monolith of a presentation, or will it be 3 separate presentations that come together as a whole?
They're probably 3 separate we're going to present them as 3 separate presentations, but they very much rely on each other to make sense. And even that, they only make sense in the context of next generation launches. And when we talk about next generation launches, we feel there's only really one being constructed at the moment, which is Starship, which none of this makes sense without that. So there are 3 projects. There are actually more, because as we've progressed, we realize there's more to it. And as you get more into detail, there's a lot more. But presenting 3 is already a big step for us, because it's quite a major conference. So we will present them separately. We're not exactly sure, and we're not sure because the conference hasn't made it clear yet in terms of what the presentations will be like. They are asking for video formats, which means we'll probably do 1 10-minute presentation for each one of them separately. We're hoping that it's possible that there's a live presentation, that we can all actually get there, but it's still uncertain times at the moment. And if we can present live, it'll be quite nice, because it'll be the first opportunity that a lot of us from Nexus Aurora can actually meet up and actually get to know each other outside of this current Discord and
What happens if you don't get on?
Well, we're there. We're going to be there. It'll be nice to see each other, though. I think it'll be a nice bonus to actually know what we look like in the real flesh.
Yeah, I'm scared of meeting people now. It's like, what happens if we don't get on? It's very funny.
I think there's enough conversations between us that we'll have something to talk about.
Yeah, true.
So tell us a bit more of the technical details for some of these projects. Then the Orbital Can, the artificial gravity, and the birthing element that you just described. So what do you think of the primary benefits that the very large fairing on Starship brings for the Orbital Can when you have that much extra volume?
Yeah, I'd like to jump, because I spent a lot of time. So I'm deeply interested in how the economics of various things affect, like everything's connected, right? And what Starship does, it brings 2 things on the table. It brings a very, very large volume, and it brings a very high up mass. So big volume, big mass, but it does it at a low cost. Now, the biggest thing which it changes, and if you go through a lot of documentation of how other like projects have been developed through history, is people tend to spend an inordinate amount of time making a widget, a thing, super, super light, and they would engineer that thing and spend tens of thousands of hours engineering an item so that it'll be small, it'll be compact, it'll be bulletproof, it'll be light. It needs to last for 40 years and nobody needs to maintain it. All these things are like crazy considerations that they used to go into designing these things. Now, the big change that's coming up is suddenly we can put 100 tons up for like crazy low costs. Say it's $20 million for 100 metric tons. To give you an example, you can launch the heaviest tank that America operates. You can shoot that thing into orbit for less than the cost of the actual tank. It changes the economics of things. So that has allowed us to say, okay, fine. Not necessarily what is the best solution, but what is the easiest solution. So we're looking at a lot of things about how do you produce these things, how do you manufacture them cheaply, not perfectly, but how do you manufacture them cheaply so that we could get all these things together with minimal cost. If something goes wrong, there needs to be a lot of, there has to be redundancy, but we're also working with redundancy of scale. and you can sort of over-design things and expect it not to break, simply because instead of going for 1.3 millimeters of steel, we're just rounding it off to say 3 millimeters of steel, and that's okay. If you take, for example, if you look at how a lot of the modules that are in the International Space Station are made, each panel, they of the module, they've CNC'd out the aluminium, and they've probably spent millions of dollars engineering and testing each individual component. And this component will end up weighing 1.3 kilograms at the end of the day. It'll be this huge thing. It'll cost $1 million just because of the amount of engineering and time they spent on it. And we're saying, well, is that necessary if we had 3 times more weight to work with or 4 times more mass? And that's changed a lot of things. So obviously we're conscious of mass, but our details are specifically around, is it easy to build? Is it bulletproof? Like, what happens if it breaks? Is it easy to ship around? We have a lot of discussion in terms of, because we're working on an open source idea, can other people make these things? That's very important for us as well, because we feel that like one of our models is if we can get more nations involved in manufacturing these things, then you could give a space program to Nigeria, for example, and they can build a part of a space station, not necessarily the whole thing, but a part of it, and we'll provide the specifications. And they can say, well, let us build a part of this, and we put it on another part that was made by China or Italy or whoever else. And we can put this on a rocket, and you can launch it for relatively cheap. And there's a lot of benefits to standardization, which is one of our main targets, is to build standards. And if I quickly had to discuss about standards, one interesting thing about the International Space Station, one of the big issues, is that the components are made by so many different companies, and they're highly engineered components where they'll have a certain screw, for example, that is only used on a specific tool made by a specific company 20 years ago, but that company's gone bankrupt. And now NASA needs to find a way to manufacture just like a screw. And it sounds stupid, but it's the problems that they're sitting with at the moment. So we're spending a lot of time reading up what was done at the International Space Station, what are the issues they sat with, and we're now looking at resolving those on as simple way as possible.
This connects back to your open source position, surely, doesn't it, about avoiding proprietary solutions and products, and the data for that being available over a longer term for replacements and maintenance, surely. Yeah.
And also, if you look at, for example, just something which should be as simple as a space toilet. I think like the latest iteration of a space toilet cost 11 million euros or dollars each. I think it's like 22 or 23 million for 2 space toilets, right? Yeah. That's also because it is the size of a football, I think, or like 2. It's really, really small. And that's because it has to be light. Everything has to be perfect. We are thinking about like, okay, let's make it 5 times as big. It's not gonna be a mass of 200 kilograms and cost $10 million plus dollars each. What if we can make it 5 times as heavy? Because I don't care. I only need 2 of those in my space station. And if it is not maybe 500 kilograms, but maybe 2.5 tons, we have that mass in our space station to work with in our design. What happens then? What if you use custom or off-the-shelf components, right? Instead of a screw that you have engineered yourself. Why would you do that, right? You do that because the other screw is maybe twice as heavy as you need it, but we don't care. That's the base way of thinking. So can we make a toilet in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars instead of 10 million? We think in theory it is possible. And combined with everything Sean just said, and the fact that you can make things more cheaply also means that you can create more iterations of that same product. So you can learn actually in practice. So we're more of the let's try and let's fail and then let's try again kind of mentality. And that only works if you're not building hundreds of millions of dollars for each product, but you create them as cheaply as possible and work from there.
And that represents a larger change in the space industry as well, not only with us, but with industry professional, is that we're now looking at trading off the cost of building to the cost of launching. And the cost of launching, as we've seen, is historically going way down now that we're seeing reusable launches, now that we're seeing large ships be built that, are also made to be reused. The cost isn't now necessarily focused on we have to launch as little as possible because every pound going up there is going to be uber expensive. With the cost going down, we can now afford to send more launches and send bigger and less, proprietary stuff. So this is good because potentially not only are we making something a lot cheaper, but the cost of launching it is a lot cheaper. So the overall cost goes down for, what ends up being potentially a better result, a more easily designed, a more cheaply designed, and a more robust product.
I mean, I that's the point I was about to kind of make. It seems to me that, having sort of talked about the space industry now for like 6 or 7 years, and you see what Elon Musk has done, it seems that his kind of philosophy has been hyper influential on people like you as well, in terms of, he's got to that massive reusable rocket by a very similar approach in terms of let's just bash it together in Boca Chica, for example, and that kind of design philosophy is rubbing off further down the river with people like you. Is that a good assessment of the it's a paradigm shift, isn't it? It's a paradigm shift.
I would certainly say so, and also I would like to just say that. The fact that things are allowed to get broken and be tested, and that doesn't mean that the end product is worse. People said that about SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets. They were like, oh, you're going to reuse, it's not going to work. Of course it worked. But then they said, you're not reliable enough. They're now one of the most reliable rockets out there. And people are saying that now about Starship. Like, oh, you're failing so much. But the failure is the quality, I would almost say, because you are willing to fail. It's like fail again, fail quicker, those kinds of nice sayings of some famous inventors. But then you at least know what works. And if you have to design everything perfectly before you do the first launch, because it is extremely expensive, but that is actually, it is expensive because you don't want it to fail. So that's like a paradox in itself, maybe a little bit. We're trying to take that other approach. Like, how can you make it as cheaply as possible, fail a lot, and know where you can maybe shave off those kilograms afterwards. And that's indeed, I would see this as a compliment, because people like us, we have not seen the moon landings. We are of that generation who are like, oh, I was just too late for those moon landings, but I really, really want to see those Mars landings happening. So how can we do this not in 30 years, like some of the old space companies are saying, like, we'll see in 30 years or 20 years if we can ever get people there. But how can we speed that process up as much as possible? And we feel that this approach that you indeed described, Matthew, is the best way of getting there as quickly, but also as economically as possible.
It's interesting to think about the conversation we had earlier about the comparisons of decision making and organization structure, and that we talked a bit about the agility of a company like SpaceX led by one person versus large unwieldy organizations historically like the state or very large corporations. Perhaps what the Nexus Aurora project offers is, at the risk of sounding like a cliche, the sort of third way, in which there's an agility there. But again, a large-scale organization still behind it with lots of knowledge as well. It's very interesting.
So what's interesting is so any development, I think, to get to a mature product needs a lot of experimentation, and we do this with our consumer products without realizing it. The keyboards or whatever is sitting in front of you has gone through probably 1 million generations through different companies manufacturing these things over time. And before it gets to where you are, I mean, you're sitting with the 1,000th generation keyboard or the 20th or 50th generation smartwatch, whatever product that you're sitting with. Because the launch industry has been so expensive, there's been very slow iteration. What engineers have been asked to do with the rocket launch industry is to go from to say, well, we're at Oxwagons now, but we want you to design the 2020 BMW. and figure out all that development and all those mistakes. And that's obviously really difficult to do. And I think that's why we got to where we are. What's interesting with our community is because most of our ideas at this moment are virtual. So we've been throwing ideas around. And the large Orbital Can, one of the reasons why we started it is somebody else was talking about a solution to building large orbital stations using the old space mentality. And some of us, we played around with our calculators a bit and did some economic, just a bit of math, and realized, well, hell, if you ignored the old model and started including the new economics that we could be seeing, because nothing's guaranteed yet, but Starship looks like it's going to happen. If you look at the new economics, the old model doesn't make sense. We don't have to spend so much time and effort designing this perfect thing, which is what somebody else was proposing. A really, really good solution to something. It's like an amazing solution, but it's overly complicated. Now, if we had to go back to how things were always designed, is we start with simple things. And then as we figure it out, we build onto that simple thing. So the idea behind this Orbital Can is it's as simple as we can get. And once this thing gets launched, then you can say, well, we know from experience, we need this little detail fixed, and we can improve that detail there. So you're sort of following this natural development process, opposed to having to figure out every single problem along the way. And I think that's really what we're trying to achieve, is to simplify things. Because we have to. I mean, we're not highly. We don't have huge budgets and to get the world's best engineers. So we have to get to a simpler solution.
So it's interesting how you talk about earlier on about mass and lifting capacity, because I must admit, my first reaction when I looked at the Orbital Can work is that its primary goal seemed to be to fill the fairing of the largest starship and to make the most of the greater volume. And so I was interested in questions about lifting volume versus mass. And we seem historically, because of the mass challenge, to have spent a lot of time lifting space into space, if that makes sense. And and I've certainly seen other recent examples where that a larger fairing or a greater lift capacity might turn into something that is full of mass and unfolds to a greater capacity, inflatable, for example, or pieced together in some respect. But you seem to have gone for the volume. You're filling out that fairing.
Well, not completely, I should say, Rob, because we started exactly with that thought. Because we said, okay, we have 1,000 cubic meters. Let's make sure at least we're going to get 1,000 cubic meters up there, right? But the top of the fairing is really narrowing down, which is logical, like a bullet. And we were trying to figure out different solutions to fill up that part as well, without creating a complicated manufacturing, difficult to manufacture design, because cheap is very important to us as well. So we actually ended up choosing to fill only 2/3 of the fairing for now with a pressurized volume, because it is a single volume. So you can choose to design one type of manufacturing technology, maybe similar to what Starship is using as well, with just a roll of steel. You make it a single diameter, and you actually have two components in the whole station, a module, and that is what we call an end cap, which has the berthing ports in there, and the cylindrical center section of the module. That's it. Because first we had we have two different components, because in the top you have fewer, a small diameter. So how do you do that? And we were thinking about solutions, and they were like, no, we're going to do it as simple as possible, even if that means that you get maybe 2/3 of the volume that you're using, because you're going to need to send up stuff that is in the unpressurized volume anyway, like solar radiators, but maybe even if you want to do an EVA, you want to be able to have a specific module that can evacuate the airlock. But that airlock doesn't need to be 600 cubic meters, right? It can also be maybe 20 or 30. So those kinds of things become possible because we leave a little bit of room open in the top. And it's also something that we realized along the way. You don't need to fill each cubic meter.
So it sounds similar to your cylindrical housing on the Mars Society project, which I think that same concept, didn't it, with the end cap and the tube.
Maybe, I didn't even think about that. Sean, neither. That's a good one.
You had two components for that too. Yeah. So is it imagined as a single space station, a single space that works alone? And how does that manage things like redundancy and safety in the way that, say, ISS does between modules if there was a problem?
Well, the nice thing about that is that we could design even the life support system to have within a single launch station have two components of each one, right? Because we just say like, okay, if we make it as cheap as possible, why don't make 2 or 3? Like a Falcon 9 has 3 flight computers. We at least need to have a life support system that has a redundancy in it, if it is a single launch. But if you even add more modules to it, so you start to get a really large station, we are using the universal berthing mechanism, which is the name of this berthing port we're designing as an open source standard, to create it also as a sort of a plug to connect all the air, water, also wastewater, but also radiator fluid if anything goes wrong. All of those are connected through this berthing mechanism. So you actually are creating a double redundancy in that case.
A topic that I find really interesting is, as I said, I enjoy modeling like what if situations going a bit ahead. And what I find interesting with the economics of these orbital cans is if we want to get people into space, like what's the cheapest way to get to create space tourism? Like, what does the space tourism model look like? And what we find out, what's interesting is the limitation of space tourism is not actually in the cost of the space station; it's the cost of the individual flight ticket. So, what we find, if we had to simulate what that would look like with a Starship costing, say, $20 million, if you had 2 of these cans put next to each other, and so an orbital can, or any, like the ISS even, its limitations on how many people it can take is more so to do with its ability on life support side than its actual physical volume space. So one can that we're designing is our life support can handle between 9 and 7 people. But that actually brings an interesting problem, because between 9 and 7 people, if Starship one day becomes human rated, which it will eventually, when it becomes human rated, to put 7 people on its Starship is actually a bit funny. You can probably put 100 people in there. So the limitation is you want to make a space station that can handle no less than 100 people. And that is how you minimize the cost of space tourism. Because if you look at a couple of years, like after 5 or 6 years of utilizing the space station, the per ticket cost, the cost always goes to the flight, getting the individual there and getting him back. Not really in the space station, because that gets divided by all the other people that got there before the time. So we imagine that over time, these orbital can stations will be a collection of about 15, 20 of them that are working together. And there's a lot of redundancy in that. And that's one of the things this universal berthing mechanism really has to accommodate, that because it means that it's sharing resources between these different orbital can stations. If life support fails in the one, you've got the redundancy on the others that are attached to it. If radiators fail, you've got redundancy. So it's one of the technical things that we're trying to solve really quite well. We spend a lot of time on this, is how do these things daisy chain together, and how do they work? How do they look? And it becomes really interesting, because the orbit that you choose has an influence on this. The solar panels that we choose and the orientation and all these different things have an effect on the economics of what a future tourism space station could look like. So yeah, it's a really interesting problem that you end up solving, and new problems end up emerging when you start asking these questions.
It certainly sounds like a very different model from a tourism point of view to, say, the Virgin Galactic model.
Well, the interesting thing is that the Dragon spacecraft is already creating like maybe $50 million per person tickets now. And they're sending only 4 instead of 7 maximum people in a Crew Dragon now. But even then, if we are to rely for any kind of space tourism on a Crew Dragon, it is not going to work, is our assumption. Because if each ticket even becomes 25 million, that's still 25 million. You're not going to spend a week in space for 25 million as an average person. We would like to get to a price of more like Antarctic tourism, for instance. It is still really, really expensive. It is not for everyone, but it is there for a lot of people. And that means that we have done some calculations that you can easily fit hundreds of people. Elon says 1,000, but it is possible. But if you want to do it comfortably, you can fit maybe 400 or 500 people in a Starship. If it's just a ferry, which takes maybe maximum a day, to one of these Orbital Can stations, which is made of multiple modules. And as Sean said, if the price is mainly about the ticket price there, and you know that Elon says it's going to cost $2 million, we say maybe 20 or even $100 million. If you're dividing that by 500 people, it's going to be a lot cheaper than maybe a $400 million SpaceX Crew Dragon flight. So, yeah.
You're going to need a lot of space to fit all the Discord members on the rocket as well, aren't you? How else can you decide who goes?
So what's interesting is we've got a lot of students, and I mean, a lot of them are a lot of them are still in school, and they're contributing to where they can, and they're passionate. And I'm kind of jealous of them, because the one thing that you do if you join our community, if you're involved, you are going to learn a lot of things. It's like guaranteed, because we dive into topics and we're asking people like, hey, we want to know this thing. And people go do these deep dives. And I'm often a little bit jealous about these kids, because I never had these opportunities when I was a kid. And they are going to grow up where this becomes a norm eventually. And the people who are involved are building up experience, and they could really get themselves there one day, simply because of early exposure.
Do you know what? I totally agree. I love that idea. I think when you hear about like really great those sort of times in history where things really turn on, like a group of people that all sort of met each other for cups of coffee back in the day and things like that. This is a similar sort of thing, isn't it? Where you've got passionate people that are connected in a certain space. And it's their sort of, it's not their day job. It's their talking down the pub, talking down the coffee shop type experience. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's an awesome experience for someone who's young and a little sponge to suck up all the kind of other people's experience. I mean, it is really, really fantastic. I would love to talk about the large artificial gravity thing, but I don't think we're going to have time. So I think it would be good if at some point, if you're willing to do it, is come back another time to talk about the maybe nearer the IAC, where it's all maybe a bit padded out a little bit more. Because I just really wanted to ask is just one kind of sort of summing up question about where you see Nexus Aurora being in, say, 5 or 10 years' time. What you kind of see it, where it may end up, and the same with maybe some of the projects, whether some of these projects do you think are actually going to make it out of incubation into the real world?
So what I think, at least what I'm hoping, because when you're deeply involved, you're seeing all these problems that we're trying to solve. What I really, really hope is that, one, we became a source of education and inspiration. Somebody, I think Gun actually uses the example of Khan Academy quite a bit. I'd like it if people see Nexus Aurora as almost a university where you learn about these things. It's where you get your first flight wings in terms of knowing about a lot of these engineering topics, because we do bring in a lot of people that are students. We've already had talks with different universities around the world, explaining some concepts, and because the topics are different. This isn't the things we talk about aren't. I studied architecture. I got my master's degree. None of this was taught in architecture while I was doing architecture for stuff on Mars, and it really changes your mind how you think about things. That's the one side, and the other side, I really hope it actually becomes a place where we can funnel resources into ideas that actually get placed on Mars. I mean, I myself got a new project that I'm just getting off the ground that I'd like to start testing next year, for example. And I hope to get this thing actually, because it won't work on the moon, but it will work on Mars. we've got a lot of other projects. Cameron's working on the MDRS, his robots, which I actually wish we had some more time to talk about, which are perfect for going onto the moon. And what I'm really hoping for in, say, 5 years' time is that it becomes a proper incubator where we've got the funding and we can channel this funding into people with ideas to promote science, to promote really the purpose, like permanent settlement of these various planets, and to bring more people in, because we've got, and that's really, I think, the important part about what we are. We've got people from every single country, and a lot of people from third world countries that have no chance of getting this kind of experience in their own country, really. I'm from South Africa. There is no way I can get involved in the space industry in South Africa. It's not going to happen because we don't really have that. But we're allowing people that could be the next Einstein, the next Elon Musk, that doesn't have a channel, who's sitting in India, who's sitting in South Africa, sitting in Nigeria, a place where they can actually get out there and develop real things. So that's what I'm hoping.
I think that's really interesting. I think that connects back to my earlier question to you about who and what you needed on the server. And I think you've hinted at maybe opportunities or chances to connect to the global south more. Yeah. From a culture and a community point of view. So it sounds really promising. And that idea of a traveling university almost is quite interesting too. So to sort of pull it back to an architectural reference for all the architects in the room, I'm reminded suddenly of the work of Cedric Price and his Potteries Think Belt. Does that ring any bells for anybody? Perhaps a particularly UK bit of architectural history, but it was a concept around using the train infrastructure to take universities to communities. And the train system was the university, and it would travel the network to bring education to people instead of
the nice thing about us is that you don't need a train station or train or even rails. You only need a phone, internet, and that's the nice thing. We're looking into actually. We're talking to a software company about some 3D software that you can use through the cloud, that you can not only use to create very advanced models with, but you can view them on your phone screen and interact with them and even design on your phone. And I would have said that's never going to work normally, but we have seen some demos and it's crazy. And that kind of thing is possible nowadays. And that's insane because you don't even have to have a good computer yourself to work with advanced CAD software. That's where we are at right now. And the fact that this is possible, that we can share this, that people can even look at a model without owning the software, those kinds of things are like insane in democratizing access to knowledge, but also to be able to contribute to whatever it is that you're interested in. And it's a bit of this Google book that I read, What Would Google Do, about the long tail also a little bit, that a lot of people who are interested in space had a very difficult time to connect to each other in the past. At this time, we have people from all over the world connecting at a very niche topic, which is maybe Mars colonization at first, and now the broader idea of human space settlement in the broader sense. That's crazy that we have 1,000 people there right now thinking and working on that, and getting some happiness from that and contributing to this in a real way. At least we feel in a real way. And the last thing that I would like to say, at least, is that what we also notice is that a lot of people learn, besides engineering skills and all those kinds of things, they also learn a very important life skill that I always tell to new people who want to become active, and that is dare to ask a question. It doesn't matter that you think it's a stupid question. It is not, because we are all here asking silly questions and trying to solve to get the right answer to those questions, because sometimes we don't even know and we find out together. That's great. But also, if you dare to ask those kinds of questions and to ask for help, what we now see happening in our community is that students are asking their professors to help us understand topics. And those are university professors who are teaching aerodynamics, I don't care, the craziest aerospace technology. Those kind of professors are starting to talk to us, including industry professionals. And that is the point where we are right now. And that's so interesting to me, because now you are going to get the people who really know their stuff, spending time educating us as an open source community so that we can really understand the things that we want to understand, and we can actually contribute in a meaningful way. And that is, for me, so exciting and so inspiring that I want to keep spending this much time and effort in my free time on this community. And I really love that.
I think the bottom line is, if you're passionate, if you're curious, if you're interested in making humans have a greater presence in space, we don't care who you are, we don't care where you are or your level of education or your background, we'll come to you. We want to bring the resources to the people who want to help us, and we want to help educate them and help give them the tools that they need to help bring these ideas and these projects to life from the most unlikely places.
And I actually think that that's probably a silver lining of the pandemic as well, that it's accelerated quite a lot of that collaboration across the world. You know, like you were saying earlier about how the Zoom call virtually has no lag. I mean, it almost seems impossible, doesn't it, that we've got the Netherlands. In fact, Cameron, where are you?
At the moment, I am in Georgia, rural Georgia.
It's been really, really great talking to you. We must get you back on to talk before you do the IAC to talk about some of these other projects.
And I have questions about the Gravity project.
Yeah, I
too.
definitely have big questions about the Gravity project.
We'll be very happy to come back, and also what we hope, because you're also in our Discord as well, is that if you want, you can yourself even become active, and we would really like you to. But what is also really great is that we hope that if we are back in a few months, for instance, that we have a lot of new projects even to talk about. And that is the way that we try to handle these projects. And even if you guys wanted to start your own project on any interplanetary content, feel very free to do so. And that's the spirit, at least, that we want to tell everyone about.
Yeah, I was a little bit scared of asking silly questions, but I've realised that you've helped me out there. it's
that's a whole mission.
It's funny, isn't it? That because I get this with students, you know, it's they don't want to ask silly questions, but actually sometimes what seems like a silly question is, if you can answer it, you suddenly realise that you yourself have grown massively in your understanding of that particular subject, because you have to get down to proper brass tacks, don't you?
Absolutely. And often questions really are the things that allow us to solve problems, because most problems start most new solutions start with a question, because generally we tend to, and I've seen this so often, we tend to be like, especially in certain designs, you'll be designing certain things and doing something the same way until someone comes and like, but why is this company doing it like this? We, for example, when we're trying to figure out what kind of solar panels to put on this Orbital Can, we've been in discussion with industry leaders, and we've looked at other designs. We looked at what the International Space Station is doing, and the question, like, how is SpaceX doing this? And it's a silly question. It sounds obvious, but questions force you to actually think about things. They force you to dive into things, and then the answer surprises us often. So questioning is important, and I think there's often, especially like what's nice in Discord is you sometimes, and it's sometimes a bad thing, but sometimes the nice thing is you don't necessarily know who you're talking to. So a high school student. And some of these high school students I really are impressive in terms of their knowledge and what they know. So you don't know you're speaking to somebody who's actually 16 or 17, but he's giving you your discussion is, you honestly believe he's a 20, 30-year-old guy with some industry experience. And they'll ask questions not knowing who I am, not knowing my experience. And it allows them to ask some questions. But generally, though, I think it's a global problem that people are afraid to ask questions because, one, we're scared of looking stupid, even though you're speaking, like, imagine working with a guy like Elon Musk who's got all this engineering knowledge and being afraid to ask questions because you might look stupid. But quite honestly, why would you know what he knows? So it's a weird thing that we don't like to ask questions, but it's something that we really need to break down. And I think we tend to do it quite well. But we generally find that a lot of people are still a little bit scared to ask questions. That's always weird.
So even Matthew was a little bit scared, I heard. So it's a good feedback and learning experience for us, this whole podcast. If only that was the only thing that we learned from this, it is that we even need to spend more time in explaining to people. Any question is guaranteed to get an answer on our Discord server. And this real spirit of, we didn't know anything about this a year ago, and we learned by asking 2 million questions. That makes us seem a lot more knowledgeable now, but that's because we have asked those questions. So start asking questions instead of being afraid, and you guys as well, of course, feel very free to do so.
It's a great test of a healthy community, isn't it? I think if you can ask a silly question, or what you think is a silly question.
Yeah. Do you feel safe enough to ask that question? Yeah, you should be.
Yeah. Can you ask a silly question? And can you click on a link without hesitating? That's another good one. I've seen that put forward before as a test of a healthy online community. Can I click on a link because I trust the people that have posted it?
That's interesting.
It's a good one. That it's something I reflect on in our Discord for the podcast, and I absolutely can. And it's a great sign.
Well, thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
The Interplanetary podcast is alive.
So, what were your thoughts going through that, Rob?
Well, I really enjoyed the discussion about community and about how to manage complex projects, and the reflecting on how their process might be a sort of third alternative to the way the sector often runs between large organisation or state organisations or small agile team startups. This sort of third way, the almost grassroots bottom up process that they're crafting with this community is absolutely fascinating. But they definitely seem to be at a bit of a threshold where they want to pursue more projects and more members, quite rightly. But as they head towards that goal and get more people on board, then how do they keep managing that community in a healthy way, keep on top of communication and discussion and decision making? That seems to be the real challenge for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about on the podcast different societies and different, organizations that you can join and things like that. I mean, this one does feel a little bit different, I think, because it seems to be technology based, as in you couldn't have done this really 5 or 10 years ago in this kind of way.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting to reflect on the differences between an organisation like this and so the history of the BIS, for example. Yeah. And how it had to go about events and meetings and discussion and debate in a very different way.
Well, yeah, and it would take ages for a piece of information to travel from one part of the world to another. Yeah. And you think that on that call there was someone in South Africa, someone in Georgia, someone in the Netherlands, us two in England. Yeah. And you think, that with no lag, and you can all talk as if you're in the same. Well, I brought the coffee shop analogy into it. That there is that, getting together.
The hope, one of the hopes, surely, is that they can really broaden that reach globally, so that it's abundantly clear from the work and the results they get that the cultural differences in the team members and the people involved starts to bring a really healthy mix to the process in ways that perhaps the history of the space sector in Europe and the US predominantly there might be more opportunities for people to get involved from other countries through that organisation. That'd be really healthy. So maybe if we get them back on, we can try and talk to them more about some of their other members. Yeah, as well as the people who organise.
I think it is exciting. I mean, if I was listening to this podcast and I really wanted to do something exciting in space, I think this would be a really, really good place to start. I think going to their Discord server is an exciting place to kind of be and see how you can contribute.
It's active. It's busy. There's lots of conversation going on.
Even if you just did it for a month, I think you could learn so much from the way it's organised. I'm still very impressed by the way that it's organised and the way that they've gone about it. And there's some serious skills going on holding that all together, I think.
There is, and I think I just hope they can continue to attract people who are just as interested in that the politics of organisation as they are the work itself. Because I think you have to be engaged with both, and I think the guys we spoke to clearly are. They're as enthusiastic about the process as they are the science, and that's key. And for it to continue, they're going to need to bring people in and encourage people to continue to be enthusiastic like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like any business that a business gets to a certain size and someone has to empty the bins to the point where it has to be someone to be employed to empty the bins. It's harder, isn't it, to excite people with the bin emptying opportunity at the company, but there's always the bin emptying to be done somewhere.
What I'd be really interested to see is how they're able to progress through events like they've mentioned, the coming up event in Dubai, to see if they can actually find some backers and some collaboration that helps them turn some of the ideas they're developing on paper and digital environments into physical prototypes and testing and ideas, because that's where it really matters, isn't it? And that's ultimately where rockets have to get built. And the flaming end has to be tested, and that's the challenging bit, isn't it?
They were talking about these small robots that in that, and the MDRS, and I think that could be, that sounds like it's the type of thing that's going to become a physical reality. Yeah, the
automated farming one, is that?
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah, so and that seems to have come about through the Mars Society conversation as well.
Yeah.
So that was great to see an organisation like this that's assembled through the process, that competition. Competition outputs themselves are a great body of work, but it's resulted, it seems, in a collaboration now between Mars Society and this group to potentially do some tangible tests on site, wasn't it? Was that in Utah we're talking about?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So I think that'll be a really interesting project to follow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that sort of diversity of ideas, although it comes with its problems, that idea of everything, all this being too dissipated, it also does give you that feeling. And I kind of bring it up, things like the Lunar Society, where you've got lots of different people talking about lots of different subjects, but all subjects are interrelated, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think it's, maybe they're missing things like artists and other thinkers as well. And we talked to, I mean, we did when we, in fact, on the episode when we were on the same episode, we talked about Nexus Aurora, when we talked to the Martian House people. That was clear, wasn't it? That there really is a really healthy way of working is to have lots of different mindsets approaching problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was certainly came out in their Mars Society proposal, that they must have had some arts practice-based input during that the development of that project, because of the work they'd done with ideas around icons on the surface of the planet that we talked about, the Tree of Life, and was it the Tree of Life? Is that the phrase they used? And other iconic pieces of architecture that would bring poetry and meaning to your existence on the surface. So clearly, in amongst the 1,000 members, there are people bringing that discussion to the table, which is absolutely key.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if they can bring meaning and poetry to a space station.
Challenging.
It is.
Yeah, and certainly the Orbital Can project that they talked about is a very straightforward piece of engineering in many respects, and that's the goal, isn't it? To get it back to a very simple, cost-effective can. It's a well-chosen title.
Definitely got a David Bowie connotation to it.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about Windows, actually, in their Orbital Can.
No.
We'll have to quiz them about that next time. I don't see any Windows in the drawings for the Orbital Can. I think
that they've got, I think they do have a viewing module as part of it. I've been reading through. Again, I mean, there's so much stuff on their servers that's growing all the time. It's a really fascinating place to kind of look around.
Even a board game. Did you see that bit?
No,
Red Stratos. Original Nexus Aurora board game based around survival on the Red Planet. So the space for that stuff, within that ecosystem, the space for these ideas, which is healthy.
Have you got any plans for this week other than working hard?
Well, I'm going to be working with a client this week on a project that needs an observatory.
Oh,
actually,
that is brilliant.
it's an observatory and a geodesic dome.
Oh wow!
So I'll be pulling out the Buckminster Fuller book for inspiration. So that should be good. And if anybody from the Birmingham Astronomical Society happens to be listening, feel free to drop me a line. There might be opportunities for future collaboration with this particular client I've got.
Well, yeah, I am thinking of getting my telescope properly housed again. So I might be quizzing you about this because
I've been looking at various different small projects, and there's lots of examples online, of course, about how to properly mount and house and make impromptu DIY observatory covers.
Yeah.
So we might be looking at that as a project, or we might be looking at some sort of off the shelf back garden products as well. But it'd be great. I'm really pleased to have a client it's part of a bigger project that will have lots of activities for different generations of kids in the heart of Birmingham. And so the connection with the Lunar Society you mentioned earlier is right there.
Excellent.
Get in touch if you're in Birmingham and you want to help make an observatory.
Awesome. Well, as I said before, if you fancy joining us on the old Discord, then it's www.patreon.com/interplanetary, or just go to interplanetary.org.uk. And if you go to interplanetary.org.uk, there are all the links to Nexus Aurora and all the stuff that they were doing. They've been sending us some links and via the Discord, bizarrely, to put up there. So that's it.
And I hope this conversation's encouraged that, because it's been all about online communities and how healthy and positive they can be.
Yeah. I loved your an online community can be judged by how safe you feel when pressing links.
Yeah, not mine. I read that somewhere else, but I thought it was great. So for any Spodcats listening, please keep sending links we can all just click on without worrying, which you all do.
It is true, isn't it? Yeah, we've got a great community. It's awesome. Right, that's it. Bye, Spodcats.